Hey, everybody. We are going to be starting momentarily. And I see us coming in. So hi, everyone. I'm Cat Caracelo, and here we are, last masterclass of the year. I actually want it to be really casual. So we're going to start slowly. Everybody's still entering in. I just want you to take a breath, land, especially if you've been watching the clock. So I want you to just give yourself a chance to go sort of land in your body, land in this moment. Take a breath and consider what it is that you're feeling about our topic today, walking the mythic path. I love this topic, and I want to actually say a little bit about why walking the mythic path is so important to me, and I think important to you. Walking the mythic path is a way to start to reconfigure what you know to be true, what you hold in your cellular knowledge about your life, the past and the present and the future. That includes your known and unknown stories, the ability to access whatever is yours, whatever your deepest needs, wants, desires, to really determine a way, a pathway, a mapped way to meet yourself in the journey. Walking the mythic path is the ability to be in one's life journey with a much broader context to what life is. You know, we get caught up in day-to-day life, right? And we're not walking the mythic path when we're caught up in day-to-day life. We're walking the mundane path. We're walking the determined path or the familiar path. And, you know, think about how you feel in your body sometimes when your needs are unmet, your wants are not being fulfilled, and your desires are, rather than full-fledged desires, like ripe fruit ready to pluck off a tree, you feel the yearning of desires that feel distanced, that feel like they're far away from you. So walking the mythic path is access. It's all about access. And I think we find our own access when we create it. Walking the mythic path requires that we start to develop a language, whether it's a written language or a creative language or a sensing language, the sensory body, whether it is an image-based language or a hidden or a mystery language. However you might sense that that evokes something for you. Is there a hidden language that you're waiting to seek or find or discover for yourself? And once we start to develop that language, we can walk the mythic path and start to determine what it is that we're living into. Now, some people might call that personal myth. Jung had a framework for personal myth, and he called it archetypes, right? Archetypal patterns. Some of us actually do that work, and we refer a little bit more to our parts of self. We think about how we're going to work with a part of self that might be wounded or might be you know, at a younger developmental age, or mired in a lot of grief and loss. So we recognize that our parts of self can be friended, can be found, can be discovered, relationships can be built with those parts of self, and we can move what we think our stories are into new territory. Well, that in itself is an evolution of a personal myth. So I want to share an image with you. Like I said, I'm really getting casual and very connected. I just want this to be an easy masterclass where, you know, we're face to face and talking about ideas. I didn't want to do a slideshow and blah, 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 you know. Want to keep it really down and dirty and simple so that you can feel it. So I'm going to do some image sharing with you because I think it's, you know, it's a great opportunity to do that. So let me see if I can do that. So what I want to do is I want to share that. So let me see if I can share this. And what I want you to do, my sharing working. That's interesting. Well, maybe I won't share images with you just yet. So what I want you to do is I want you to close your eyes. We're going to do it a different way. And I want you to put your hand on your heart and your hand on your belly. And I want you to identify a color or a quality or a story that's waiting for you to connect. And I want you to go deeper into your belly, into your center, and I want you to feel yourself opening a door and crossing a threshold and entering into a beautiful, calm landscape. And I want you to seek and find a piece of your story that's waiting for you, that's tucked somewhere pretty close by. So just take a few, look around and find a piece of your story. And I want you to pick it up. And I want you to tuck it into your heart. Just feel what it feels like to touch your own clue, your own message into your heart, into your body. And bring yourself back up to the surface of this call. And take a breath and open your eyes and just notice what it feels like to hold a piece of your story, something that's been separated from you. Something that is beyond the threshold, something that was actually in the imaginal realm. You enter through your body, you're transitioned into the dream world or the imaginal world right through a doorway. And you actually entered in as the traveler or the seeker. Now that you have that thing that is yours, that piece of your story, I want you to make a mark about it. I want you to take a piece of paper, or maybe you even use your body or you draw in the air. I want you to make a mark that represents that moment of finding something that's yours. And this is a way for you to start to develop a relationship with the traveling self, she who seeks, moving across thresholds and gathering what is yours, gathering your own deep wisdom. Remember that it might be a color, it might be a moment. It might be a message. It might be a clue. It might be a stone. It might be a key. It might be a ring. It might be the wind or a petal or a branch. It might be a wing that brushed against your face. All of these are clues that might have come to you as messages in that short moment of traveling past the day-to-day life, the day-to-day mundane into the mythic. So that experience is now part of your story. That experience is lived experience. Your mind doesn't know the difference between what we just did together and alone, separate, in our own space of traveling in, each unique and individual, yet we're a collective. We're a circle traveling at the same time. So immediately the energy goes up and you get to experience something that's yours and take it into the creative, take it into the concept of mapping and marking what you discovered or what you found or what you experienced. Even making a mark in the air, right? Even making a mark on your heart somatically. Even making a mark or writing a word or reminding yourself again of what it was that you just felt and heard and tasted and discovered, and where you were and what it felt like to be there, to be in this skin, to be in another skin, to meet something as you cross that doorway. Our personal mythology is a never-ending story, but it's not fixed. And so when we're in our day-to-day life, sometimes we're put in the position of, introducing ourselves to someone and shaking their hand and saying, this is what I do for a living. Or putting ourselves in the position of saying, I'm so-and-so's mother. Or I work for this company. Or this is my profession. This is how many years I've been doing this. And we truncate or separate ourselves from ourself, sometimes because we spend so much time in these compartmentalized facets of the whole self. So we only share that little bit of ourself that feels safe in the context of our day-to-day life, wherever we are, whatever we're doing. Journey work is a way to become fully expressed. It's a safe container to find ourselves again. And here's why I'm talking about walking the mythic path, why I'm so passionate about it. Because there was a time that I completely lost sense of who I was. I unraveled myself. I actually spent time recognizing that I was lost, that I was confused, that I was dismembered from who I had been. My roles were changing. My commitments were changing. My loyalty and what I had committed and promised myself to was unraveling. And I literally had to stop and take stock and recognize that what I was feeling, my emotional sense of where I was in that moment, was of being nothing, was of being disregarded or unimportant. I really had a hard time knowing how and where I was going to fit in. But I promised myself in that moment that I was on a quest of discovery, that I was unwilling to leave it at lost, that I was going to go out and seek and find. And I was determined to discover myself, determined to find my way back. Here's an image of how I felt. This is a soul collage card. Some of you may be familiar with soul collage. All kinds of collage is a really good way to enter in, but this is how I felt. Look in the very back of this image and notice what's there. A blue dump truck releasing its load of sand. And that's how I felt. I felt dumped. I felt dumped. I felt like I was returning to a womb space to rediscover or to rebirth myself, but that there had been a death, a true death of the self. So that may feel extreme. For some of you, it's going to feel really familiar. But it may feel extreme, but this was an articulation. It was literally me creating a story, a narrative of what I was experiencing in a way that helped me to understand the depth and the breadth of that experience. And in understanding of it, in actualizing the creative process and understanding that it wasn't the woman in the womb that was moving me to tears, it was the feeling of being dismissed or dumped that was the leading edge of my story. I had to tell that story to myself to see it. So the creative process becomes a catalyst, a way to see and know what it is that we're doing. We're all able to recognize that there are times in our life that we need to do deeper work. But over the years, over 15 years as I've developed this work, I think we need ample time and space every moment of every day of every year to do our work, to be witnessed and seen and held and know the stories that are surfacing. Because our personal myth is evolving, because we are evolving, we have to have the time and space, and I would say sacred space, in a circle of like-minded kindred spirits, women, who we can own and know our stories and feel safe enough to allow them to rise. This doesn't mean that we're always sharing all the time. It means that we have the space to do what we do. So many years after that initial moment of being dumped, of recognizing that I was in a death and rebirth cycle, I created the Mythos Journey work and brought it into, I brought a language into these collectives where we can travel together and actually engage depth work through art as process. And what that has turned into in the recent years is a year-long journey called Quest Path. So walking the Mythic Path is a way to move yourself in and out of the imaginal and have it become part of your living language so that you can travel and know yourself deeper, meet your desires, meet your needs, meet your wants, tell your stories, but actually translate the movement or the living energy of the creative process to live into life. So walking the mythic path ultimately is about mythic living, allowing that personal myth to be living energy where you can really access it all the time. So Quest Path is coming. Quest Path is coming, and I really want to invite any woman, every woman into Quest Path. As a year-long journey, it is something extraordinary. And it is a blend of all kinds of influences, mythic influence, wisdom words from authors and writers and mythic themes and ways that we engage our journey, but we're doing our own journey work. We're engaging whatever it is that allows us to be present. You know, sometimes we're beginning a quest and we don't even know it. Sometimes we're called to a quest and we don't know it. But there are times when we're aware of shadow or a pain, a place of pain, unresolved grief or loss or confusion that feels important to address. And I want to bring this in right away because it's an important facet of journey work. As human beings, we want to find better, more effective ways to do our healing work, because healing and wholeness are also part of our life experience. And so when we feel derailed or dumped, as I shared with the image earlier, how do we start to hold that? How do we start to explore that? How do we work with that in a safe way that doesn't, where we don't lose ourselves more? So some of my earliest teaching in terms of becoming a coach and coaching is my work with Debbie Ford. I did 3 years of intensive personal work. She trained me to be a coach, and her work was shadow work. And I was very influenced by it. I was very influenced by teachers in my life and ways in which I was doing my work through artist practice, through indigenous ways of knowing, shamanic dreaming, and shadow work. So let's see if this resonates with anybody. Here's an image of how we might be embarking on the journey, stepping through a threshold. Darkness is a dance with steps and a rhythm for each of us to learn. Finding the darkness that dances us between our own layers helps us to understand how to partner ourselves, how to meet ourselves. This is the song of healing humming from within, inspiring the movement of living into life. Mythic living. The purpose of the quest is to harness more of our own inner wisdom, to find the darkness and the light that dances us between our own layers. It's really beautiful because creative process is layered process. To actually engage materials might be to use a collage or a paint or doodling or drawing or dreaming. And think about what that is, to touch yourself and surface your stories with the creative. You can actually see that this image is part of the image that's right behind me. It's a healing scroll. And it's a good example of some of the creative ways that are part of Quest Path, part of that year-long journey. Everything has meaning, and we're looking for that secret language, finding the clues, the pieces of our story that are just beyond that next doorway or along a path, or embedded in the seasons of life or the wheel of the year. In fact, I'm wearing a necklace. You might not be able to see it because now I'm a little square over on the side, but I'm wearing a necklace that depicts the seasons of the year in the sacred tree. But think about how many stories are held in these ripples. What part of this image inspires you or feels like it might be a representation of who you are as you travel towards the doorway of your quest? If you're new to using creative materials, these are the most simple ways: tearing and ripping and finger painting and dabbing and doodling and using such simple expressive arts to be in process with yourself. And to actually engage the creative process is to touch pieces of your story as you're tearing and placing and gluing and layering. You're going to feel things in your body, and your body actually starts to open awareness. And this is where we get conscious. This is where we get conscious. So I I want to say that Quest Path, as the culmination of 15 years of my own personal process and then the professional development, is the best doorway to enter into working more deeply with yourself. Now, those of us who come into Quest are writers, poets, closet creatives, highly creative. Some of us think of ourselves as artists, some as artists of life. We're dreamers, we're thinkers, we're seekers. Some of us create altars or sketch. Some of us collage and use mixed media. Some of us photograph our passage through life and mark those moments, capturing ideas or concepts or the flicker of light as we step through a doorway. We tell our stories through the creative in all different ways. Did you know that some of the most highly creative people in the world, filmmakers and fine artists and designers and writers, spend 92% of their creative time musing? Musing is another word for creative thinking, right? Musing is almost caught up in a reverie. You know, when some of us were scolded as children for daydreaming too much, right? We actually already have the capacity to travel. And Indigenous dreamers know that traveling past the everyday moments actually guide us in our life. And so more space in certain cultures is made for daydreaming or musing or finding the pieces and connecting the dots. Think about if we're starting to connect the dots and we have to rise up out of our body and connect the dots like they're stars in the night sky. That requires a certain type of energetic flow and ability. Then we bring all of that information down and create with it in real time. So we create a reflective surface through our art of what we might know or learn or experience. And those are our news stories. Those are ways that we start to coalesce the living narrative, the way we're walking through life, what informs us. It's incredibly rich, incredibly rich. So just a hint at the end of this call and in your email that you'll get after this masterclass, I'm going to give, I think, a 24 to 36 open window, and I won't know until I write it, so you'll know when you get it. It's probably going to be a 36-hour open window to get a rollback discount on Quest Path. And for those who are brand newcomers to Quest, if you haven't signed up yet, you're getting a rollback discount of $100. You still get the early bird, $500 off, so you get $600 off. The first 25 people are going to get a one-on-one coaching session with me, and you're going to get free access to a brand new self-guided class called Mythic Listening and Ancestral Healing, which is a fantastic entryway into Quest Path because we're starting at November 1st, which is Samhain, which in the Celtic Wheel of the Year is the time of death and rebirth. So from the time you get that first email after this masterclass, and it's going to be in a couple of hours because the masterclass has to be available, but you're going to get the open door for 36 hours. And I'm going to say that right now, 36 hours for the deeper discount, $600 off, Mythic Listening, free self-guided e-course, forever access, a year of Mythos Journey in Quest Path, all of the goodies, plus a one-on-one coaching session with me. This is really invaluable. And I want to give gifts. And the reason I want to give gifts is because I've received so much. I've received so much from this work. It's my life work. And this is the doorway. This is the entry place to know thyself more deeply, more fully, to give yourself the opportunity for any kind of deeper healing, but all of the expression, all of that expansion, all of the joy, all of the exuberance of finding your life, determining your life, discovering a new life path, questing. Sometimes we travel with questions when we do depth work, right? We travel with questions, unanswered questions, or things we just don't know yet. This is indicative of how we're always growing. We're always growing. We're actually becoming new. So we start a new year in a time of a spiritual thin time. If you follow any of the Celtic ways or indigenous ways of knowing, there are thin spaces in the year where we get to connect more deeply with the numinous, with the spirit world. And we connect more deeply with our own soul's knowing at that time. So that becomes a doorway to enter into the journey in a way that it's hard to replicate. We actually hold so much intention in these circles. And tens of thousands of people have gone through Mythos Journey work with me in different iterations. So the field of the experience is really powerful, very grounded, and it is very safe and sacred place to do our work. But it gives you access to so much. And then we start to travel around that seasonal wheel. Now in the Celtic wheel of the year, that's an 8-season wheel. In the Gregorian calendar, we think of 4 seasons, and those 4 seasons are actually depicted in this sacred tree. But in our lives, we may experience 30 or 40 seasons, or thousands of seasons. We might experience 4 seasons in a day. Think of emotional seasons. Think of seasons of mood. Think of seasons of your rhythm, your energetic field, your energetic flow. How do we know ourselves? Through seasons of life. So of course we work with seasons of life and ages and stages and parts of self and archetypal energy to work and move through that doorway again and again through the year, many doorways. The seasonal wheel helps us to turn and move in a new direction and actually meet ourselves in the journey in a brand new way. So the work is so luscious and so delightful. And we're a tribe of women, so we're reflecting one another, bringing our own journeys to the surface, telling our stories, holding space for one another. It really becomes very luscious. Of course, we may share our journeys in all different ways because we're many kinds of creative, right? But I love this quote from Yeats. Now, this is a beautiful quote from a Celtic gentleman, right? The world is full of magic things, patiently waiting for our senses to grow sharper. Did you know that Aristotle decided we had 5 senses? Plato and Aristotle, 3,000 years ago. We have over 22 senses. Our body is so wise. We have a brain in our head. We also have a brain in our heart. We have a brain in our belly. Our body knows how to hold itself in time and space. The world is full of magic things, patiently waiting for our many senses, our extraordinary senses to grow sharper. It's in the journey, it's in the wandering, it's in the wondering that we grow that capacity to seek and find magic. It's another source of mythic living, isn't it? We may build around the wheel of the year, and this is something that happens often, where we use the seasons, but we also think of ourselves as part of the wheel of life. So here's a little hint of how this might look. It's a little map. Remember I talked about mapping, creative mapping? Well, here's a beautiful wheel. And you can see right there to the left of winter, death. But you can see opposite death, you can see the maiden at spring. We live in a world that is 2 hemispheres. And so when half of the world is in the winter, half of the world is in the summer. And so for those of us who are traveling from different hemispheres, we're actually traveling through our own seasons. And we're using different configurations of the wheel of the year. You can see the archetypal wheel here. You can see references to the medicine wheel here. You can see the elements in this wheel. All different references and the phases of the moon. 8 phases of the moon, just as we are working with 8 seasons of the year. We're also working with multiple wheels, multiple reference points. So the Aboriginal wheel, seasonal wheel is 6 seasons. So this is very adaptive. We're actually going to be building our own wheels and working with them throughout the season. And they're influenced by our story, not predetermined, not prescriptive. I want to stop right now and ask if there are any questions. The Q&A is right down at the bottom of your screen. Go ahead and pop in any questions to me if you have them about artist process or quest path or depth work or walking the mythic path. I want to make sure that if you have questions, that I answer them. So use the Q&A rather than chat, because I won't see chat as much as I see the Q&A pop up in front of my face. So, now here we are, we're always working with ourselves and we're always working with what is. You know, some of the way we want to use creative processes to tell the stories that need to be told, that are ready to be told. Walking the mythic path is one that brings us into a stronger connection with truth telling through our perspective. But it also is a way to actually grow and expand perspective. So creative process has a really practical application because, like I said, it's not a secret language or a hidden language, because once we're in relationship with creating, whether it's tearing or using easy, paint process. I mean, I'm a big one. I was creating yesterday and today, and I was covered with paint and, I have pens everywhere. And, sometimes it's just sketching out or doodling out or mind mapping out and releasing things that are relevant to that moment. That's a truth-telling technique, right? So I want you to release a story you've been holding. I want you to take a moment, grab a pen and paper, or if you don't have anything, write it in the air, write it on your heart. Tell a truth that's been surfacing. Tell a piece of your story that seems to be tripping you up or becoming more obvious, something that you know is working on you or asking you to pay attention. Think of holding that story in the palm of your hands. Think of holding that story as if you were holding a candle. And watch it flicker. Watch it shift. Watch it change and move. As you hold it, watch it flicker. This is the story that is surfacing to meet you. And you're taking that story and you're feeding it into something, or you're finding a representation of it. And Deb just mentioned in the Q&A the Voyager Tarot. And yes, I'm very familiar with the Voyager Tarot and have a long history with it. But that's a great example that you might use other people's art or other reference points or oracle images to find pieces of your story. And so it's not always about creating everything in the moment. Sometimes it's about using all of your art you've already created. You have decks, you have art journals, you open a page, you pick an image, you start to surface the story and allow it to flicker, allow it to guide you or lead you. So Deb, great observation that all of, Voyager Tarot and all of these kinds of tools are creative tools, and they can come into process at any time. They're part of they'll be part of enhancing your depth work because they are visual narratives. And you're connecting with an image or a symbol that tells a story that you know. And so it becomes your story, it becomes your image, it becomes your symbol. Does that help? Is that what you wanted? We're asking? Yeah. So not only are we choosing symbols consciously, we're also finding symbols coming towards us or finding that images might choose us. And if we travel into the imaginal realm using guided meditation or any kind of the creative process, I do a lot of guided meditations in Quest Path, and I bring in a lot of reference points and a lot of creative jumping off points. But you may find that there's energy rising to meet you or images that start to tell the story, and you know they're important, but you don't know what they mean. So it's still that secret language, and you're stepping along a path, that's revealing clues as you go. Oh, great. So here's an image of something that might come through the surface of your creative process. And, it's a pretty clear story. So this is actually a Journey Circles card. Journey Circles uses words, and there are 5, 6 different card types. So there are a lot of combined use. And the Tyranny of Perfect is certainly a story that most of us know. And it's a story that trips us up. It's a root story. Perfectionism of a kind is evaluation. And we value ourselves and have challenges to our value and our worth, often based on things that happened to us when we're young, ways that trust was withheld or trust was broken. And so the Tyranny of Perfect is a lot about us coming into relationship with trusting ourselves. So if this were your card, if you had created this, torn these images, torn these edges, cut this circle, and it's floating kind of in a night sky like the moon, isn't it? So think of the circle as a pool or a mirror or a moon reflecting light or darkness back to you. Is this the new moon, the dark moon, that actually hides its face but holds its form and witnesses you? Or is it like the new moon or the full moon, that is shining its light, illuminating this story, illuminating this part of self, who wants to be set free or wants to be rediscovered or wants to be in relationship with you? How old does she feel to you? Is there a younger, smaller self hidden underneath her skin? And what do you notice about this image that might be part of your story? So you can see how powerful it could be in our circle to be, sharing our stories, sharing our art, and actually creating a collective, a container of healing stories. Because healing and wholeness is catching. There's a ripple effect of what we do in circle. Circle work is incredibly powerful, but we're women from all over the globe. So we have a global circle, and it's incredibly intimate and very flexible. Lots of options about, when and how you do things, but this is powerful work. Circle work And gathering in circle is one of the prime ways to affect change in your life and the lives of others. Maybe you lead circles and you don't have a circle. Or maybe you yearn for a circle, or yearn for a place where you could talk about the inner children, or the archetypal edge, or the rising light of the priestess that's starting to really move you. But you really don't know how to do that part of your journey. It's a brand new edge. And all of the ways that we meet the mythic resonance of those who have come before us, how we dip into the pool of the collective and we find the healing. We start to shed the skin of the tyranny of perfect. Some of us come in needing to shed the skin of the tyranny of perfect so that we can actually make art and learn to tear and create, so that we feel what we need to feel first. So that tyranny of perfect can catch us in so many ways. But there's so many stories. So, like leaves on the ground, we're finding our way. And especially at this time, we're definitely in the northern hemisphere falling back to earth, falling back into the earthy body, and feeling that darkness rising and finding that gold inside, the gold in the dark. We calibrate ourselves, our bodies, to the seasons of the shifting light. And those who are in the southern hemisphere are entering in through the doorway of spring, rising light. But I have so many women in the journey, in this journey work, who feel out of step with the seasons of where they live. And those of us who are highly impacted by weather patterns and global warming and the pain of the earth, or the change of the earth where we live, the loss of seasons or the change of seasons or drought. We get thirsty. We feel the pain of the earth, of Gaia. We feel the pain of the collective, of communal collective. Where do we take that energy? How do we work in a healing way to offer ourselves an opportunity to be held and grow? I want to show you all something, because I think we're, anybody who's drawn to this work, highly creative, highly intuitive, highly sensitive. Most of us, some of us are super high achievers, really driven, linear. But I bet those of us who feel like we have a really good linear, like research-based mind, there are a lot of educators and thinkers, and, we're all researchers by nature, right? But if you feel like, oh, that's really well developed, but I'm actually entering into a new relationship where I need the creative to take a different form, there's probably a highly sensitive and intuitive part right there. Some of us feel overwhelmed by that sensitivity. And questing and experiential process in the way that I've designed it into these communal programs, where there's always, and you can enter in on your own. You have a classroom and you have your materials, and you get to create in your own way on your own time, and join when you want to come into those juicy calls that we have 16 times a year, come on to those virtual retreats on Zoom or not. Everything's recorded. You can listen later. So it's completely flexible for hermits like me. Now, I'm a teacher and a hermit. So I really do love fence sitting, but I need a lot of my own time. When we're talking about the work we do and why journey work is so powerful, why it's such an agent of change, and how it is such a catalyst to engage the imaginal journey and the experiential process, is because of this high sensitivity, this particular attunement to needs. So you all know, most of you have seen this triangle. It's a Maslow triangle, right? Physiological needs at the bottom, and then safety. This is sort of the ground up premise of what a human infant needs, and how those needs must be met And then why, you know, some of us fail to thrive or drop into depression or have struggles. There was a broken trust around safety or love and belonging or esteem. And so that's where sometimes we're doing our work, is we're restoring these layers. But I want you to think about top down. For the highly sensitive, intuitive, and creative type, we're talking typologies, we need transcendence first. We only find transcendence in the imaginal. We have to move outside of the mundane, of the everyday, to find the magic. And this is the mythic realm. This is incredibly powerful. It's called Maslow reversed. I use this in my depth coaching program. This is something I actually use in other teaching forms through Journey Path Institute. But this is, I want you to know why this is so potent and powerful. Why art as process is as a kinesthetic process leads us through the doorway back to ourself. It's because we meet ourself in another realm, and we're meeting needs that are not met in ordinary time ways. We need to actually move outside of time and space to meet transcendence. And this happens when we create, when we lose track of time, when we start to realize that we're channeling energy that isn't even our own, or we're realizing we're being impacted by the flow of something that has come along unexpected. We're opening a door for the mythic river to flow through us when we create. That's a really powerful place of meeting needs top down. Highly intelligent, highly sensitive, highly intuitive, even empaths. Are some of us empathic? Do you catch the emotions of others? And it buffets you, it throws you around, it throws you off center. This is a centering practice. This is centering work. This is grounded work, but it's top-down work. Transcendence and self-actualization. Self-actualization is another word for healing into wholeness. The word healing literally means to whole. It's not curative, it's not to fix, and it's not to eradicate. We're not trying to kill off our shadow stories. We're integrating. We're getting to know them. We're getting to know ourselves. That's self-actualization. Aesthetic needs. Creativity is highly aesthetic, isn't it? We start to wander into landscapes that we're creating that are meaningful to us. We're making meaning of what we need based on who we are, and we're creating it by using images to create new narratives that are influential. These are living landscapes. Then we work on the cognitive needs and the esteem needs and the love and belonging needs. All of this comes through the journey. Incredibly powerful. Have any of you seen this? Let me know in Q&A if you've ever seen this. It's a beautiful model, isn't it? You know, there's a quote that I love, a teacher of mine, Jean Shinoda-Bolen. Most of you know her. She does a lot of goddess archetypes, right? We incorporate some of that into our journey work. She says, there are landscapes that affect us like dreams or poems or music that move us out of our everyday reality and into a deeper archetypal realm, where images and feelings, intuitions, or sensations that we otherwise would not feel are felt. Myth and legend that touch the same psychological depths have a similar evocative effect on the imagination and the mood. We leave the ordinary world behind and venture into another world. That's what we're doing in the journey. That's what we do in Quest Path. That's what we do in Mythos Journey work. We start to understand more deeply what those landscapes are that affect us, that call us home. You know, when we step on sacred ground, if you've ever traveled and you found yourself in a place that felt familiar, where you stepped onto sacred ground, or you found yourself in a moment, in a place, maybe very close by where you live, and you realize that the soles of your feet were touching the depth of your soul. That's another way of meeting yourself in a thin place. Soles of your feet walking on ground that holds ancestral resonance, that remembers you home. You know, so in the creative process, we're working with places, we're working with reflections of self in the journey, we're working with journeyscape, right? So there are landscapes that affect us, like dreams or poems that move us out of our everyday reality into the deeper archetypal realm. That is brilliant. That's a living landscape, but it's mythic living. It's starting to access the deeper stories, the deeper mythic river that flows through our lives, that gives us something that we can't get any other way. So this is the body of the work that came out of me feeling dumped, you know, not having any kind of sense of where I belonged or how I wanted to live or what it was to restore or to experience restorative healing. So how do you engage the journey? Where do you begin? What is the image of good space that can move you back into relationship with yourself? I think it's discovering depth. I think it is finding the language, the secret language of the self, and often finding a community of others who can hold the depth of the journey with you so that you can go as deep as you need to go. And, you know, if we're doing deep healing, and some of us are, we're doing it to benefit the whole self. So deeper the healing, or back again, you know, when you feel like, I can't believe I'm doing more work around this part of my life and this story that won't let me go. Or we have some trauma in our past and we've done a lot of work. We've been in therapy, we've done a lot of work, but we're not done. It's a human condition. We're not done. And yet we can get really frustrated by that, really dismayed, or feel like, wow, there are a lot of stuck stories because I'm not done with this. So how do I go deeper? We're compelled to go deeper so that we can expand out further. Deeper healing only comes when we're ready. If you come back to a story or a part of your experience again and again, and you know that you're healing deeper, you are also expanding out. You're getting ready to make a big leap. And listen, we're not done until we're done. You know, I have 20-year-olds to 85-year-olds in Quest Path every year. The work spans from, used to be early 20s, now it's about late 20s into, you know, the later years of our life. Why? Because we're all women doing the same work. Not in the same way, but the same work, because we're not done until we're done. We're not done being who we want to be. We're not complete in our becoming. That which is coming to us to be realized, to be activated. Art is a catalyst for creative change and a catalyst for transformative change in our lives because it activates energy, and we're not done, and we're always in our journey. So something like Quest Path becomes such an evocative space. You know, yeah. So let me look at the questions. So a bunch of you love this model. You hadn't seen, some have seen it before, highly sensitive people work, highly sensitive personalities. Yeah, this is really incredible. Really incredible. I've not seen it used before, but it's super interesting. Some people are dropping off because I have to go. Deb says, my biggest fear is that I'll not find out. I'll find out something that I don't want to know. So I want to talk about that because that was my biggest fear. I'm so glad you said that, Deb. My biggest fear was that I was nothing. So I showed you my dumped card. And I felt for so long that I was looking through a gray window. You know, there was a lot of dirt. There was a lot of detritus. You know, sometimes we move into a season of our life that just feels like that. There are a lot of gray clouds. Sometimes it's met by the exterior. Sometimes it's not. Remember, we can feel inner seasons and outer seasons can be entirely different. So to acknowledge what it is that you feel, what it is that you fear is incredibly potent. To actually enter in through the door of pain is necessary when we know we're doing healing work. But how to do it when we are creating images that help us to tell the story of what we know or what we sense is a truth. It's not going to be the only truth, it's parallel truth. It's not a single truth. It's an aspect of perspective. And so we create multiple pathways of different ways we're traveling in and out of relationship with what is ours. I never want to be disingenuous about lived experience, but I do use the language of story. Because story allows us to give ourselves an equal playing field of all experience. You know, sometimes we're working with unknown stories or unknown parts of self. And we perceive that that's just brand new. But if it's part of that mythic river that's flowing through us, it may have always been present. And if a part of self has always been present to our life, maybe it has a lot to tell us about what it's been doing as we've been moving along that life path. So there's a building of relationship with what we sense or what we know to be true, but we're looking for many truths, many stories, parallel paths. We're bringing it together to actually re-story our stories, to activate restorative healing. Now, this is a concept that is birthed out of creative process, and it's a living energy. So you bring yourself into it slowly. And in fact, we all sort of gather in and start to create with an intention. And then with the seasonal wheel, the season of Samhain, the season of the turning of the wheel, either into spring or into winter, towards winter. So we're working with the light or the darkening days, right? Whether we're in southern hemisphere or northern hemisphere. But then we start to thread in our sense of where we are in the journey. That's truth telling. We use images, we use energies. We start to work with the wheel of the year and the wheel of life and the archetypal energy. And we have some mythic energy that comes in and meets us. It's very potent. Very potent. And so it's entering in feeling lost is as powerful as entering in feeling full and abundant. I mean, there's a range of experience and all of it counts. Everything counts. The creative process is abundant. And you may find yourself creating in this way and that way and the other way. But how potent is it to know ourselves that well? Here's a beautiful quote, Marianne Williamson. It takes courage to endure the sharp pains of self-discovery rather than choose to take the dull pain of unconsciousness that would last the rest of our lives. This is deep work, but it's joyful work. It's delight. In the journey, we're seeking delight. We're envisioning what can be. Here's you know, that sense of visioning into activating, envisioning. So the journey takes us on all kinds of different directional pathways that lead us back to ourselves again and again. And in that, we're growing. We're actually moving that spiral of experience into a new place, a new place. This is how I'm going to have us end, because I think this is brilliant. This is Elizabeth Gilbert from her book, Big Magic. And some of you know this book and some of you don't, but while the paths and outcomes of creative living will vary wildly from person to person, I can guarantee you this. A creative life is an amplified life. It's a bigger life, a happier life, an expanded life, and a hell of a lot more interesting life. Living in this manner, continually and stubbornly, bringing forth the jewels that are hidden within you, is a fine art in and of itself. So this is how we engage the brilliance of walking the mythic path. We're developing a living language. We're developing certain techniques and ways to meet ourselves and translate the language of creative process into the language of living. It's an art and life process. We get to engage parts work, imaginal realm, and mythic reference, and so many juicy reference points of seasonal wheel and phases of the moon that are reflections of a woman's life. Why are they included in Quest Path? Because they're part of a woman's life, because they're metaphorically relevant to each and every one of us. And they evoke a certain response in a certain time frame. So where you are now and who you are now is absolutely unique. And Quest Path meets you and takes you on the journey that allows you to rise consciously into your life in a brand new way, again and again. It's lived experience. You can never unlive it. So I think we've covered a lot. And what I want to say is thank you for being here on this masterclass. I think we've touched on everything that was promised. And what I want you to know is I'm inviting you. I'm personally inviting you to Quest, because Quest Path is a year-long journey that only opens at the end of October into November, first 2 weeks of November. And then it closes its doors. And it's the most powerful work that I've ever done in my life. To travel for a year with the same tribe, the same circle of sisters, work in whatever way is comfortable for you, is so nurturing. You know, to be in a nurturing environment, an interesting, evocative, inspirational, and nurturing environment is absolutely necessary to recognize and be familiar with one another in that circle is one of the most potent reasons we need circles in our lives. Some of us live far away. We don't have the intimacy we want in our neighborhoods. Some of us are hermits, and we actually like living a more secluded or reclusive creative life. Some of us need and yearn for some more connection. All of it is possible here. We come as we are. We're so many kinds of women dancing, you know, dancing in the quest together. So I'm going to send you my offers. 36 hours from the time you get your email, you're going to get an extra $100 off the early bird. That is actually 50% off of Quest Path, the value of Quest Path, $7.99. You get monthly payments. That is under, I think it's under $79 a month. So maybe 76, 77, haven't figured it out yet. I'll give you the number. You get, for 36 hours only, if you're new to Quest Path, if you haven't signed up already, if you've signed up already, you got a great something else, right? I know you did, because I know what these bonuses are. So you already got something fantastic. One-on-one coaching session anywhere in the world. We do it through Zoom, just like this, you and me, just us, get one-on-one coaching session. You get entry into lifelong access, self-guided, mythic listing, and ancestral healing. We touched a little bit on touching the soles of your feet, the soul or the spirit of the land. That's where you start to listen to the deep ancestral messages, part of our mythic approach to this work. And it's all life affirming. It's all life giving. It's a lifetime experience. In fact, I have a lot of quest sisters who travel year in, year out, because it's so rich, it's so powerful. And this design is designed to give you the very best of journey work, the very best access to your own material of life. And I'm here to guide you and help you and hold this space, and we co-create together. So I hope you'll join me. Last masterclass, wanted to go out 2018 with a bang and wanted to be more face-to-face. So I hope you're okay with no silly slideshow and just me popping in and out with my images to kind of meet and match whatever I was talking about. It is really, my heart opening to your heart. This is the work that I think we need. This is also a safe place, and sometimes in this noisy world, safe and sacred space to do women's work together. And so I'm available if you have any questions, and look for my email. I send you off. I remind you that this flame has already been lit for us who are circling in. And if you're called, answer the call. If you feel this is important, answer the call. If you're a closet creative and you feel a little bit tenuous about the art making, open the door of your heart and let the creative process find you. This is about you. This is about your quest. This is about your work. And I can't wait to quest with you, to spend this year with you, starting in just a couple weeks. So thank you for being here. Love you all. Bye.